Greetings, everybody. Hey, everybody, Facebook family, YouTube family. It is that time again. First of the month, literally the first of the month. We are here for the Lighthouse with Dr. T. Y'all, those of you follow me, you know what time it is. You know what to do. Share. Make sure you invite. Because this is going to be an awesome conversation, and I really want you guys to be able to enjoy it. So I want to give you time to get on this feed. Listen, shout out to me in the comment section. Let me know you're there. I'll say hello to you, you know, all that wonderful stuff. And while we're doing that, we're going to listen to Choosing Myself from one of my favorite artists, Naomi Rain.
Sometimes my mind is playing tricks on me. I won't believe it. I won't believe it. Not for 1 second. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. But I still have questions. I wanna believe you. Want to believe you. It cannot help it. Wish you were see through.
I hope you all are enjoying your 4th of July weekend. And for some of us, we're in hotter places than others. So hopefully you're keeping cool. Hopefully you're keeping yourself hydrated. And hopefully you're enjoying your 4th of July weekend. All right, make sure you share it and invite everybody. If you're sharing with some of your friends who may not necessarily have Facebook, I am on YouTube at Beacon of Hope Champions. So type that in and you'll be able to pull up the video for the live for tonight. Because we're simulcasting both on Facebook and on YouTube. We got to maximize the social media. So make sure that you let them know. I'm so afraid to choose you. I'm so afraid to choose. So I'm choosing myself. Be sure to chime in. Let me know you're online. I see some of y'all coming up in those numbers. All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Lighthouse with Dr. T. I am your host, Dr. Tawana House, the founder and CEO of Beacon of Hope Champions Ministries, LLC, based here in Pensacola, Florida. And look, you guys, more than half of the year is gone. I mean, gone. So here we are in the first day of July, the 7th month of the year, and we got 6 more months left. And I want to first say thank you to everyone that has followed, has shared this broadcast. Because when I started this in faith, not knowing where it was going to go, not knowing what was going to happen. But I appreciate all of you that have been part of this. Hello, Michelle. Thank you for joining us. I thank you for you being here for the topics we talked about. Just to give you a rundown, we talked about dealing with grief. in January. We talked about for the 3 months, we talked about being first responders to mental first aid, pastors and leaders. So that was February, March, and April. May, we talked about accountability. And then last month, what was a powerful conversation was about healing from the wounds of being with a narcissist. And that was a powerful conversation. And in fact, I have a special announcement about that because we got a follow-up conversation coming up to that. So we'll tell you about that towards the end. But on tonight, in honor of National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, I want to start off with a quote by B.B. Moore Campbell, in which National Minority Health Awareness Month is named after. One of the things she said was that her color is her joy. It's not a burden. Her color is her joy, not a burden. So for those of us who are of color, we need to understand that there are a lot of different things that we deal with culturally, relationally, economically, socially, but none of it really should be a burden because it's a joy just simply in being who we are. So tonight we're going to talk about something that's going to help us with that, and that's called being self-aware. So let's talk about that. Let's do a little overview. What does that mean? What does that look like? So when people consider self-awareness, they tend to link it with introspection or self-reflection. However, there are some slight differences between those concepts. Introspection refers to the process of attempting to directly access one's own internal psychological consciousness to see thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Whereas self-reflection focuses on the reason why individuals have thoughts and feelings and act the way that they do. Now, there are a lot of benefits to being self-aware, and that is, they're very vast. Personal growth, better self-control, regulating your emotions. Come on, I know we all need help with that. Improving mental health, developing relationships, and leading a happier and productive life. The guest I have on tonight, when I first met her back in February of this year, I was at a She Speaks Hope Clergy for Women retreat. She said something that to this day I have stuck to and I've applied in my life, and it has changed everything. And that is, say no, and I dare you not to give an explanation. Ever since, I haven't. Even today, I didn't give an explanation about things because I realized if I'm aware of myself and I know what's going on, it's not for me to have to explain to you what the deal is. If I know it's what I need, it's just simply what I need, right? So, my sis, Pamela Benson Owens, the president and CEO of Edge of Your Seat Consulting, and is currently serving as the acting executive director of the Six Square. For 23 plus years, Pam has owned Edge of Your Seat Consulting, a unique consulting firm that is dedicated to assisting for-profit, nonprofit, and faith-based entities. He is the author of Rooted, a Field Guide, and she's also an ordained minister. I recommend you guys get that book, Rooted Field Guide, because a lot of nuggets that I shared on my page came from her, okay? So she resides in, I believe, Round Rock, Texas, right? Okay. And she's a wonderful mother, wife, girlfriend, sister, all that good stuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends and loved ones, I would like you to welcome my dear sister, all the way from Texas, Pamela Benson Owens, to the Lighthouse with Dr. T. Hello, how you doing?
Oh, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. You've already taught a whole bunch in the intro. Just talking about self-awareness. That's why I love being around you because I need to take notes. You already broke down the self-awareness thing from the beginning. So I always love being around you. It's a gift. I learn from you. Thanks for having me.
And absolutely, it's an honor to have you too. And I learned from you as well. I think, it's a beautiful thing when iron sharpens iron. And I think all of us should be able to always be a student of life because we're always growing. So let me ask you this. When it's interesting we're talking about this because our jurisdictional bishop actually talked about this very subject when he was preaching last week during our final night of convocation about looking both ways, talking about not only looking to God, but also looking to self. So what exactly does it mean to be self-aware?
I think self-aware, I think people think that the self-awareness journey is going to be something that's smooth and everybody says they know themselves. It's actually absolutely hard. It can be painful.
Mm-hmm.
It can make you struggle. You can have an identity crisis at any age. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's interesting that that was the final text for the sermon, because I think that part of our challenge today is there we're in a world where everybody creates this mode of comparing versus being grounded in who we are, because we are
Mm-hmm.
all these things that make it feel like it's not okay to be who we are. So for me, self-awareness is being unapologetic about all my stuff, all my
Okay.
things, those personality traits, those things that make me sensitive, those things that make me tick, those things that tick me off, like whatever those things are. We never go all the way in figuring out who we are. And sometimes it's because we're afraid of what we'll find. And I
Mm-hmm.
always say to people, but when you are sitting in those spaces, in those dark places, light is always shining if you're closer to knowing who you are, right? Like that bridge to
Mm-hmm.
God is, who am I in God, right? Who am I in this space? And how does that impact other people and myself? And I think we stop short of doing it because we scare ourselves. I think we're also afraid of our anointed greatness, and so we sabotage ourselves into really knowing who we are. So to me, I see a lot of self awareness up until it gets hard, or up until it's going to be, a challenge. And I always say to people, lean all the way into all the messy pieces, because there's even beauty in that. So I've been on this journey forever. You don't graduate from self awareness, you don't graduate from anything else. So you have to be ready to lean in and do it. Oh, I think we're having a technical issue. Uh oh. Well, we'll just hold a minute to see if she comes back.
I'm so sorry. Are you still there? Hello?
I'm here.
Okay, listen, I am so sorry, you guys. In the midst of all of this, my computer decides they wanted to crash down. Can you believe that?
Oh,
Oh, I was like, that devil lied.
no, no
That
problem.
because he doesn't want us to get this, but oh, we're going to get this tonight. Oh, yes, we are. That's how we do. See, I ain't one to I don't play that. We're gonna get this tonight because we need the help. We need to understand what this is going to help us with. So I apologize for the technical difficulties, everybody. We're back on, and God willing, he'll cover this. We're gonna be all right. So, my darling, go ahead and continue what you were saying. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I was like, where'd she go? I'm just gonna hang out here and see if she comes back. But
Yeah.
I was saying that part of our opportunity when it comes to awareness is to get into the messy parts too. We always stop short of that, and there is
Mhm.
learning and light in the messy parts. And I feel like if we would just stick with it and then take ownership of who we are in Christ, like take ownership of our identity, it would give other people permission to be who they are, right? So half
Right.
the time we send our representatives to the space because we're afraid of what people are going to think about us if we send our real selves, and it's not
Oh boy.
it's not serving us well. Our kids are seeing that. You are you have a mask on, and it's just that just has not been an effective way. And so I will say to people all the time that when you go down the true path of self awareness, you will learn very quickly that there are a lot of people in your circle, but not many in your corner,
It's
and that's
just,
okay.
yeah. I remember that's one of the
Yep.
things you said at the retreat, that there's a difference between people being in your circle and people being
Yep.
in your corner,
Yep.
because the ones that are really in your circle, the ones that are closest to you, they're the ones that are willing to accept you for who you are. Um,
Mhm.
and one of the things I was talking to a pastor about, one of my brother pastors yesterday, was that I know people have different personalities. They're going to react to me in certain ways because I know I'm different. I know that I stand out. Okay, this is just what I do. But being authentically yourself should give room for others to be their authentic selves. But to get to
It
that
should.
process of knowing what that means, it means being accepting of a lot of things that typically in society they say you shouldn't accept about yourself, like flaws or proclivities or weaknesses or things like that. When really being self-aware is the whole point of you acknowledging those things and day by day working on getting better, but being honest about it and not trying to shield it away as if you're something you're not, and not having to worry about comparing yourself to somebody else because you're like, look, I got my own stuff to deal with. I got time to be comparing with stuff. So that's a very good,
Right.
the way to point that out. So then,
But if you
mhm,
think back, Doctor, let me say this real quick. If you think back to the retreat, even the first several hours, people were just kind of holding back. And then somebody in the room, if I recall, said something like, I'm really struggling in my marriage. And as
mhm,
soon as that person said it, everybody's shoulders went down.
mhm,
Everybody started talking. Do you remember that?
mhm.
Everybody was like,
Our body language shifted. I
everybody,
remember that. Yeah.
yeah, like it was a permission slip to bring your whole
Yeah.
self. Like
Yeah. Because we
I
were
was
being a
right, exactly, right, yep.
right. Okay. So with that being said, as we understand that it's not a smooth road, and being self-aware and learning that's a journey that you go on for, really that's lifelong. How important would self-awareness be as far as someone who is recovering, as far as in mental health, as far as them learning how to manage and balance life in spite of their mental challenges they may be having?
The duality of that journey is so difficult because we have not done a good job in this country
Mm-hmm.
of really educating people about mental health. And so you live in this space, or mental illness, you live in this space of shame that is debilitating. And so I
Mm-hmm.
always say to people, there's always these assumptions made, right? There's these assumptions made about somebody who is, who might be experiencing or in a space with mental illness. And I say, why is it that if it's anything else, like diabetes, heart disease, whatever, has no stigma, but the brain, the most complicated organ, right? Like this thing has a lot to it. Frontal lobe, prefrontal cortex, and we can't then give it its same respect and say there might be a situation, right, where
Mm-hmm.
that creates a different path for somebody. And so I think part of the issue with self-awareness and mental illness is that we don't talk about it enough, especially in communities of color,
Yes.
but also the shame that goes with it really
Mm-hmm.
prevents people from getting help. And I walked my own path with that with postpartum.
Mm-hmm.
I am sometimes absolutely shocked that I am here today. Sometimes I still am.
Still am. I was in a really dark place at that point, and would have gotten on the path of support quicker had I felt like I had people around me that I could tell.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
person that ended up coming to my door and saying, "Hey, there's a we got to talk about this. We got to get you some help," was my dad, who grew
Mm-hmm.
up in a generation where they absolutely, are you kidding me? He's not going to therapy. Like, he grew up in a generation where that was not even a possibility. But
Mm-hmm.
he recognized that I was not myself, and that there was something going on, and he was the one that really ushered me into getting support. And um, when we don't talk about those parts of ourselves, we're frauds. Like, that's a part of my journey. That's a part that forever shaped and changed who I am today.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
don't we try to leave, just like we read the scriptures we want, and don't read the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
We also skip trace our own self-awareness journey. It's like, I don't want to tell people that. Well, you're missing out on an opportunity to strengthen yourself around those things that make you who you are. It scares me. It really scares me for young people today who are
Yeah.
watching these adults denounce and act like mental illness doesn't happen. It's dangerous. It's careless.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to really do have to do better, truly.
It reminds me of something when you just said that. It reminds me of something that I heard Dr. Darius Daniels say, who's out of Change Church out of Atlanta, and he spoke on, about understanding misunderstandings and how if we don't understand, we'll misuse. So that not only
Ooh,
just results in, if we don't understand fully God, then we're going to kind of misuse what God is about. If we don't understand ourselves, we'll subject ourselves to being misused. And one of my passions, which this, is really about impacting communities of color, especially in the Black church, and pastors and leaders stressing the importance of them being examples and doing things for self care and awareness of themselves. So that can be an example for others to feel like they're going to be seen. Because what's happening is that because you don't understand what this looks like, or this crisis looks like, or what someone is going through, rather than being compassionate and open minded, saying, well, hey, let me see what's going on, then you just misuse it and treat it as if, okay, I don't understand what this is, so it's bad, which is not true. Not true.
yep. But I will tell you, one of the things that, if you go back and just think about time in seminary, if you've worked in for-profit organizations around being on a team, if you look at job descriptions today, everything says communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
We not done right by ourselves. We need comprehension skills too, just as much. So
Yes.
if you can communicate, but you can't comprehend, to your point, and have an understanding, and be able to have a posture of compassion for that for which you are trying to understand, we create further harm to people, right?
We do. Yes.
We do. And so that, to me, when it's always about communication skills. Okay, great. And what about comprehension? What about having a willingness to try to understand whether you've been through that experience or not?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You make a valid point, because when you think about it, as far as the healing process, hello, Teresa, that's my cousin. Thank you for joining me tonight. Um, I think about the whole healing process, and one thing I heard someone say once, which was powerful, was that you have to be mindful that when you're healing, that if you're in a very intimate relationship with someone, or they're very, very close, there's a tendency that possibly that person that's right there next to you could get hurt while you're healing. But the only way you can come to that conclusion and be considerate of that other person and separate yourself, knowing that you need this time and space to yourself, is to comprehend where you are, to
Ooh,
understand where you are. And that's the part that's hard to face, because it requires a painful look at you. And it it just makes me wonder, it's like, this is soul work, this is work we got to do. And sometimes people just don't want to do the work, and yet they're thinking they keep on doing the same thing and things are going to change, but it's still the same way.
right.
It's
Yeah, I mean, you can stay on the surface all day. but
Yeah.
you're not really able to, to hone in on your purpose, your life's work, what's meaningful, being present. If you're kind of on the surface, I have surface people around me all the time, and I just am not about that life
Hmm.
because it's
Okay.
not legit. It's not honest.
Okay.
It's not liberating, right? True liberation is willing to absolutely lean into your self-awareness unapologetically, right? So I
Mhm.
say that because a lot of times it's like, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, I'm just like I had to condition myself to unlearn an apology before
Mhm. Mhm.
I acknowledge a part of my identity,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
we're conditioned to do that. Like that's not, to say that is not okay, and that's not lady. Whatever those things are that we condition ourselves to, and we leave ourselves behind, or we bring a different version of ourselves, and then we get mad when people expect that version of us that we gave them.
Mhm. Now, ooh, now you tapped into something else there. Hello, Minister Sonia Hosey. Thank you for joining us tonight. Hi. Sorry about that, y'all. That's our sister. She's the reason why we know each other. So we had to do that. We had to acknowledge that. Okay.
Yes.
Um, you bring something up about that because as I've heard said also that rejection, when someone feels rejected, when someone feels like they're not accepted fully, or they don't feel safe enough to be themselves, and I've been there because I was in a marriage like that, you suppress who you really are.
Mhm.
So then you bring out this version of yourself that you feel is going to be acceptable to them, but you're not safe in that particular situation. So the real you only comes out in spurts in places where you feel safe, to be honest. Hello, Alicia Williams. Yes, that's my other colleague in the mental health fight. Thank you, sis, for joining me tonight.
I,
Um,
I love Dr. House how you picked rejection to be the example. That is my biggest challenge
mm,
is the path of rejection. And so imagine, getting halfway through your first phases of adulthood and waking up and realizing I have had to protect myself because of my fear of rejection, so much so that the people around me don't know me.
mm-hmm,
Long relationships
mm-hmm,
that I had to just go, y'all don't know me. I know a lot of people, but you don't know me.
mm-hmm.
Because but for me it was a protective measure. You cannot underestimate what trauma does,
Yes.
right? You can't
Mm-hmm,
underestimate what rejection does. You
mm-hmm,
can't underestimate what a few words somebody says to you can stick with you, and you can decide that you are those things they said. The brain is a complex place.
yeah.
And this whole first half for me, I always talk about like the battlefield of my mind, which is like
Mm,
I can cognitively know something, but still carry shame. Right?
yeah, yeah.
I know who I am. I know I'm a woman of faith. I got it. But when I try to execute the day to day in that identity, it sometimes it just pops out of nowhere. Like you don't graduate from self awareness.
Mm-mm, mm-mm,
It's a long ride. I mean, you don't. It's not like you wake up one day and like I got it down. Right?
mm-mm,
Self awareness needed here. It's a daily commitment
mm-hmm.
getting to know every version of yourself along the way.
Yeah.
Right?
And learn from every version of yourself that you have and learn from each of them. Learn
Learn.
all the different sides. Yes.
That's right. That's right. It's real for sure.
Yeah, it is Will. You bring up something that's interesting because here's my question, just for the general, understanding. So let's say that you're someone that's not self-aware. I mean, you don't know that you're like what you are, don't know that you have these issues, or maybe you're willing not to deal with them. What are the effects of that? I mean, as far as on that person, their relationships, as far as not being self-aware.
I think there's a lot of impact to not being self aware. I think that you don't have a pathway to emotional intelligence, conversational intelligence, relationship intelligence. If you just talk about kind of the science of it, it can also lead to things that, people, we throw words around a lot, but it can really be a pathway to narcissism that you don't realize is going on. That show really messed me up because I was like, oh, this is close, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
when you don't have kind of those mechanisms to check in, like I do a check in all of the time, and it can
Mm-hmm.
be something as simple as like, can I identify the ways in which I was helpful today? Can I identify the days that I created a space for me to care for myself? What are the things that I need for myself to be grounded? What are those rituals that help me stay focused in terms of like who I am in the world? Like I'm constantly asking that. I think we have messed this world up by thinking that we have to be trained to have the answers. We're
Mm-hmm.
academics. You got to have answers. And I tell my kids all the time, what questions are you asking yourself? The answer is great, but are you asking yourself questions to really explore, like, who am I? Who am I now? Who am I in this season? What do I like who I see when I'm around this group of people?
Mm-hmm.
What am I leaving in my car when I go to meet with this group, right? So when I first got married, I was one of the first people to get married in my group. And after everybody started getting married, we would go and have, dinner, or we would go hang out. And I started recognizing that every time we were in this group, it was like an hour and a half session about how horrible our husbands were.
Oh my goodness.
Right. And so after a while, I was like, I don't think this is a positive. Like, I'm thinking this is not positive. And so I made a comment about, I would love for us to spend. I mean, I want us to be able to have all the space. I would love us to spend some time talking about our hopes and dreams, what we want to do, how we want to behave. Has anybody read a new book lately? And I got politely uninvited to that group after that dinner.
Wow.
And for years they went on and had dinner, and I'm like, man, what happened to the dinners? And finally somebody said, you are not willing to go along with the content of being ugly about our husbands, and so they uninvited you, right? And so that really destroyed me. Today I would be like, thank you so much for the invitation being taken away, because I know
Mm-hmm.
who I am, and that's not how I want to spend my time. I don't want
Right.
to sit at the table talking about people that aren't there. Not
Mm-hmm.
interested. Right.
Right.
But back then it crushed me.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted a place to fit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I see what you're saying, because God created us for relationship. He created us to be relational with Him, with
Mhm.
others, and with our environment, whichever that could be, around us. And in those situations, when you're wanting acceptance because that's just part of your human nature and who you are, you know, you don't really think about, because of all the trauma that happens in life and what opinions you kind of went with and who you thought you could trust. It gets complicated and gets convoluted, and we kind of get missing in action of who we really are. And you said something that was really, interesting, because I was, I thought to myself, in my journey, in my lifelong journey that started, almost, it'll be a year ago in August, when I decided to make that move to be single and by myself and do my healing. One of the things that I learned is that the more I was willing to go through this process of self awareness, the more I realized I wanted something more in the relationships I had. I didn't want surface stuff anymore. It got tired. The idle stuff is like, don't get on my phone talking about just whom other. No, I want to know about the emotional intricacies of what's going on with you in this situation and things like that, so I can learn. It's like those kind of surface things. Surface don't do it for me no more. It's like, I could see you up there preaching or teaching or whatever, and that may be your Superman, but I'm more interested in Clark Kent. What's going on with that? So
Absolutely.
it's like I'm not easily impressed anymore. I'm
Yep.
saying it, pastors and leaders. I'm saying it. I'm not easily impressed with that no more. I don't care who you are, your name, your collar, garment. I don't care. It's like, I would like to know who's the real person, the human being behind all of that, because that's the person that's critical to everything. And I think a
Yep.
lot of people don't think about that, because we are all human beings. We are broken and fragile. And if we're not honest enough to say, you know what, I don't feel like showing up today. I remember we talked about this.
Yep.
I don't feel like showing up today, or I don't have it today. It's okay to say that you don't.
Yep.
You're not expected to have it all. And whoever society thought said that you're supposed to, that was a lie. And
Yep.
so,
Yep.
I mean, it's just an important thing with that.
But
Mm-hmm.
part of the issue of self-awareness too in this society that's all about hustle culture and getting, hustle and productivity, is we're leaving our souls out. right? And
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
part of the challenge that's been really interesting for me the last 2 years from a self-awareness perspective is I was perpetuating hustle culture. So when I speak to you, I expect you to say, I'm so busy, I'm doing all these things, whatever, whatever, whatever. And that's true too. But think about how many times you talk to women and that's all we say. Nobody
Mhm.
says, I took a nap today.
Hmm.
Right. And I've implemented naps. I just got back from a sabbatical. Like we don't honor that. And so what happens in that space is we gas each other up to keep thinking that our identity is tied in our productivity. It's really
Mhm.
that my identity should not be completely wrapped up in my productivity or my hustle culture or my ability to look busy. Like that's not what we're doing here. And so some of that you lose friends over that too. When you're like,
Yeah.
actually, that's too much. I'm going to say no, and I'm not going to do that.
Mhm.
From an identity perspective, I know what I need to be able to restore and be grounded, and it
Mhm.
can't be going 24/7. I can go 24/7, but should I be going 24/7?
No.
No. God chilled out. Jesus took respite.
Mhm.
You
Right.
know, and so yeah, I mean, self awareness is also being able to get yourself off the hamster wheel of
Hmm.
human doings instead of human beings. Like have
Wow. Okay.
stop the hamster wheel. So I say no a lot, and I'm not popular, but I am grounded in who I am, and I'm consistent in that. And the people that violate that the most are the people that violate the boundary. The people that love me the most
Hmm.
say, "Good for you for putting up a boundary.
Mhm.
Way to go on saying no."
You know what? Let me ask you something about that because I remember when we were in the retreat and I was sitting next to Minister Hosey when you said that you challenged us and said, I dare you to say no
Mhm,
and not give an explanation.
mhm.
Tell me the strength and the confidence to say that. Where does that come from to do that?
I think that is the journey of deciding who I am not going to be and who I am going to be. Right.
Okay.
And so that comes from a lot. And people, I don't say that flippantly. It came with
Mhm.
a lot of pain because in the world of the church, it's like if you say no and you're not doing the women's auxiliary, blah blah blah, or the tea, it's lock in. Your name is mud. Like it's like what you said no. You need to be a servant. I'm a servant over here in the anointing and the calling that God gave me here. I'm
Mhm.
doing this over here. And after a while, it gave other people permission to go, no, I'm not going to do that. And it also kind of, if we're honest about it, the doing piece is an ego driven thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
As a church, we're good about flattering each other. Nobody can do it like you. Can you come and travel
Right.
6 weeks? No. Well, we're missing an opportunity to mentor and coach and train other people to do that work. The kingdom battlefield is large.
Mhm.
You need more soldiers. So sometimes you got to just allow other people to do it, not because you can't do it, but
Mhm.
because we need to create a pathway for other people. It's not always about me. I don't always need to do it. And so that's wrapped up. And I always tell people, like, if you're doing all the things, check your ego on that, because
Right.
you don't have to be doing all the things, right? That
Right.
kind of have to prove ourselves. That means if you have to prove yourself, we have some identity issues.
Right. And now you said something that's really powerful because it's like you were talking about how people feel like they have to do this stuff. And it could also be a sign of being territorial too, because they feel like if they're not the ones, then nobody else should have the opportunity to do anything. And that is not the way that we should go about it. Yeah, Minister Jose, she said, I learned so much for that statement when you said that. I remember, believe me, I'm telling you, that thing hit me like a ton of bricks. I never forgot it. I'm telling you.
The
Because
territorial thing is real.
mm-hmm,
Comes from scarcity mentality, right? Like I have
mm-hmm,
to hold what I have because there's not enough. Versus, isn't the whole thing about our faith walk about abundance and space for everybody? Why do we go counter to that and go like, I have to hold this myself? Versus, there's enough for all of us. My arms
all
open
of us. Mm-hmm.
for everybody.
Right, right. I think, I'm glad you brought that up as well because, I mean, if we want to go there, we can go there because as far as my self-awareness journey, I will have to say it's helped me to deal with a lot of more things that have happened in church with people. Because now it's like when I say no, they have to respect my boundaries, because the only way people are going to respect boundaries is only if you tell them and that you're consistent in establishing them. And so
Yep.
I found that in me being myself with all the stuff that I've been through, all the things that could have brought me that I felt the shame of and everything, I realize now that with my self awareness journey is like, I can really care less what you think of me because you already know what's going on. You can put that out there if you want to, but I already know about that. I'm already dealing with that. And it just hits you in a place of being healthy about yourself to where it's like, you know what? I'm so glad to be delivered from people. I mean, I just so glad to be delivered from people because I know my lane. I'm good with where I am. I ain't trying to cause no collision course, trying to get in the lane what you're doing. That's what you do. I'm gonna stay here with what I'm doing, and we're gonna make this work together. And like with, I don't know if she's still on, but even with my colleague Alicia Williams, I just took a class on being certified as a mental health first aider. I found out at it, thank you, but I found out after that she actually does training for that. So what I told her was, I said, the next time I do a presentation, I'm going to stress the importance of having someone designated in your ministry to be trained in this area. I said, and here's the person that can help you get trained.
Got to do it.
See, so you see how it's like I didn't have to be the one doing the training. It's
Right.
like you got that knowledge, you got that understanding, you went through what you went through to get that. So I want to celebrate you and appreciate you for what you have and let you have it. But see, I'm self-aware enough to say, I ain't got that. I
Right.
don't have it, and that's okay. I
Right.
wish people will understand. It's like, as we culturally, as Black women and things like that, why do we feel like we have to show up for everything? Why do we feel like we have to explain ourselves about everything?
And why? But we have to be the expert. That's trauma, though. When you feel like you have to be the expert in everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they don't. Because there's not a value of Black bodies, let alone Black female bodies. And so oftentimes it's like I have to be an expert in everything. I don't see anybody else having to do that, right? And so it's like, you know, your comments just then about the opportunity to build the bridge and get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to build the bridge to the opportunity and get out of the way. We try to hold on to it and tussle with it. That is not how that's supposed to happen, right? And what happened to us being able to admit, you want to talk about self-awareness, being able to say, I don't know. I'm not trained in that. I don't have the skills, but I have somebody that does, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not be diminishing to our identity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't claim to know anything that I don't really know. If I don't know it, I'm just like, I don't know it. I can
Mm-hmm.
probably find out, but I don't know that, but I know somebody that does.
So wouldn't pride be one of those hindrances in our self-awareness journey because we're not willing to humble ourselves? It's like, you know what, you just don't, and you just don't want to admit that. Why? What? I mean, why would people feel that way, that they just have to be prideful or try to make it seem like they have it all together or break this facade? When the truth is, if you don't know it, you don't know it.
Right. Pride and pride's play cousin, shame, guilt, right? Like
Okay.
all
Okay.
those, right? It's like you put that into that, that's a perfect storm of really not being able to be self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
This society where we can really, you hear people say all the time, bring your whole selves. To do it, what really happens is bring your whole selves up until I don't like something about you.
Right.
Bring your whole selves until your anointing makes me uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Bring your whole self until I feel uncomfortable in my gifts because your gifts are so great. So
Mm-hmm.
so there's always an up until with that, and we got to be better about not shutting people down when they bring their whole selves.
Mm-hmm. And not being and not acting as if yet you're having that you're not being approachable or standoffish. In fact, that if they are not their whole selves, not to treat them as if something's wrong with them, but actually just embrace them for who they are. And I think that's another thing that
Right.
I think along with self-awareness, wouldn't you say self-compassion would also be important too? Because if we show more compassion to ourselves, we can show more compassion and understanding others. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I lost you for a minute. Well, what I always say to people when somebody approaches me and they go into a space of trying to talk about something, like, I don't know what's wrong with Dr. House. She's crazy, whatever. I say, oh my gosh, let me stop you. What else might be true? What else might be true? Like before you start making your assumptions, like we don't honor other people's stories. Like there's
Mm.
a whole lot that's going on, and we don't extend the grace of going. What else could be true about what we're experiencing? I read the other day that the trope of women, specifically black women, who have quote an attitude. You've heard that, like we're
Mhm.
stereotyped as that all the time.
Mhm.
Is simply despair with
Wow.
nowhere to go.
Mm. Mm.
And I
Mm.
and of course I'm listening to that and I'm like, that's me.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
me. Oh, I lost you. Did you? Oh.
Yeah, are you still here? I hear you. Mhm.
And I thought, oh my gosh, I felt the first time in my life, like my defense mechanism and my identity that pops up because I'm used to being under, like you know, I'm always used to people deciding what I can't do. I'm always used to being the expectations being low of me in a room, and so
Mm.
I had to tighten up, right? And so that part of my identity is a absolute survival tactic. And
Wow.
so the other one was like, that is really about despair, about how long you've had to like sit in the space and prove yourself. So when you get an attitude, the armor of the attitude, like not the Christ like armor, but the attitude, like I gotta arm up. It's despair with no place to go,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And that where do I let off the pressure valve and say, oh my gosh, I need a safe space,
Yeah.
or that I go to tables and I can't even make connections with people because I'm waiting to be rejected. So I make myself undesirable on the front end so that I can beat them to the punch of rejecting me and then blame them.
Right, but yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes, Elder Felicia, thank you for joining us. Lady Gina, oh, thank you for joining us tonight. Yeah, those are my peeps. So when you say that, it's really interesting because it's like we feel like we have this, like you said, it comes from despair, not having anywhere to go, and it's like this is the way I'm going to have to fight to survive. But
Yep.
yet, that's not. It's almost being forced into an identity that we were not meant to be.
And it's
And
exhausting.
uh-huh.
It's exhausting to
Yeah,
do
it
that.
is. It is exhausting. I found it to be mentally exhausting with what I went through when I was in that the 12 years of marriage, and I realized that, after I was coming out of it and all that, I realized I said, wait a minute. I said, I really need to get an understanding of who Tawana is. What is she about?
Yep.
Because I felt like I had nowhere to go. I was in despair, and that's the reason why I did have the attitude, because I didn't have no safe outlets to vent what I really felt. And I
Mhm.
was forced to bottle everything in because, as an elect lady, unfortunately, being a pastor's wife, who do you talk to? Who can you trust without worrying about your business being put out in the street or your husband finding out about it, who happens to be narcissistic and manipulating and controlling? What do you do in
With
those situations? Where you're just, just like, and you about to explode, and there could be collateral damage all around you, because once you do explode, people who had nothing to do with it, like maybe your children, feel the effects of stuff that has nothing to do with them. i
right.
think i think us as people, we need to stop saying that what goes on in our house stays in our house, and we need to create more safe spaces,
I absolutely agree
these
with you.
honest conversations.
I think I told you, I think at the time that we were together, she speaks that you walking out of that was probably the most courageous act, right? Like I was like, that is the most courageous act. And I don't know what point for you that you woke up and realized that you did not recognize yourself, right?
Mhm.
I don't know that point yet. You've not told me that story, but the bottom line is sometimes the story we tell ourselves about all the collateral damage around us from our kids and the family is really the story we're telling ourselves, because the bottom line is once you've made yourself a casualty, people around you have no chance.
Nope.
Doesn't
Nope.
matter. It's either going to be right. Like, so when you start doing that, when like, I don't know, I'm in quicksand, I don't recognize myself, it impacts the people around you versus I have to
Mhm.
remove myself from something that's not healthy,
Mhm.
go
Mhm.
after getting grounded in who I am. It will absolutely realign itself because you've done the courageous act of not making yourself a casualty. Now that's self-awareness.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It is. And you said something that was really just interesting right there about self-awareness and making that courageous move. Because to be honest, I had to be honest with myself and said, this is not good for me. I'm not well. I'm not well. I'm not healthy. I'm not where I need to be. And I was trying to understand, well, why am I acting like this? And I'm starting to realize, wait a minute, that this doesn't go along with who I really am. It was a duality all of a sudden that I was dealing with. And I'm like, wait a minute, why am I living out this identity that's not true to who I am? And the toxicity of the situation is what made things even more unhealthy, not only just mentally, but spiritually and even physically, you know. And it's just amazing to me, like people, when it comes to making self-awareness, it's such a powerful thing, and it's always a constant journey on working on yourself, because you realize, this is what I was going to get to, it could be alarming and overwhelming at first, because all of a sudden, once you get out of something and you start to see things clearer, it's almost like, what the heck was I thinking? Where was my head at? What was I doing? What? Are you kidding me? I said, like, what planet was I on all these years?
Yeah.
But that part of it, as I encourage people, is that's the part that I've learned to trust God, to take it one day at a time and one situation at a time. That it can't, it's not going to all come together at once. This is stuff that's going to take a lifetime to work through,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's just that much. And it's okay to admit that it's just that much, because we be dealing with stuff that knocks the very breath out of us.
Absolutely. And we're always worried we're not going to be okay. Can you identify, Dr. Okay, now I'm interviewing you. Sorry.
That's fine. We're sitting here, we can do this.
So were you able to, because we're always worried about not being okay. Like, I'm not going to be okay. But we already know better. Cognitively, spiritually, our faith tells us we're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
You have a moment you can speak to in that journey over the last year where you were sitting somewhere and you were like, I'm going to be okay.
Let me just tell the truth. At first, I wasn't okay. I didn't know if I was going to be okay. I didn't know what was going to happen, because I'm like, okay, I just moved out of this house. I'm back here at home with my mom, which God knew what he was doing there with that. Here I am starting over. Things are a mess. How in the world am I going to pick up through this? What are people going to be thinking? Because they know that when they seen me, they seen me with him. They seen me with this. And so for a while, I was like, I'm not going to be okay. I'm not going to be okay. I'm not. I said, but then the light started coming in when I realized that God used this whole thing, my faith in him, coping, just seeking him still. He was like, I'm not expecting you to have it all together. What we're going to do is we're going to take it one day at a time. I never expected you to figure it out.
That was self-inflicted, right? We self-inflict that.
Mm-hmm. We do. And I was self-inflicting it, thinking that's what I had to do. But God said, no, I didn't tell you that. Because why would you do that if you don't? That would make you seem like you don't need me.
But here's the other thing. What is together?
Another,
define that.
Yeah, what is that?
What does that mean? Right?
What does that look like?
We do that. It's like, what do you mean together? You mean I'm going to make sure that I'm not in a harmful place? That's together.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Not subjecting myself to toxicity and making me doubt myself. That's together. Having the courage and being an example of you do not have to stay in something that is absolutely harmful to you. That's together.
Yes. It's my way of fighting. It's our way of fighting. And for us, for you and I, it's still a daily journey for each and every one of us to know what it means to say, you know what, even there'll be days like even today, which I thank God for strength. But today, it marks 2 years that the 18-year-old son that I helped to mother and raise with my ex, Rajan, passed away at the age of 18. It was 2 years ago. 2 years ago. And today, I was aware of myself enough to say, you know what, I'm having a moment because I'm missing my baby.
Yep.
But in those moments, it's so funny that it's like I could hear my son's voice saying, like, in a deep baritone voice, "Don't like, Mama, stop all that crying. Don't do all that crying, Mama, don't do all that crying." And he's like, "I want you to live now." And it's like every time I hear that, it keeps me going and realizing that that's what he would want me to do. And I'm aware enough of myself to say, you know what, I'm not going outside today. I'm not trying to be on nobody's phone running my mouth. I ain't got time for that foolishness. And see, I think that's the thing about self-awareness, is that you're learning to be aware of what you willing to put up with or willing to deal with, and what you will not deal
Absolutely.
with at all. And it's time for us to be more accepting of that of ourselves. And those who really care and love us will accept the same of that too.
Right.
Those in our circle will.
Yep. And
Not
those
just in the
that
corner, but circle. Mm-hmm.
and those that don't, we will care and love them from a distance and continue
Mm-hmm.
to pray for them. But they are not everybody. And part of the self identity and self awareness piece is recognizing that not everybody is your responsibility or project.
Okay, can we say that again, please?
Right? Like that's been a big piece for me because
Oh.
I associated helping people and taking on people as my project is like that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm laboring in the vineyard. That's what I'm supposed to do. And then one day I will never forget this. I was walking down my street and and God said, "They're not your project." And I went, "What?" I was like, "What?" Because I actually would just ego thrust myself onto people. Let me help you. You need a job? Let me help you. Whatever. And then God was like, "I'm sorry. I didn't. What are you doing?" They didn't even ask. Sometimes people wouldn't even ask me for help. I would just offer it. And he
Oh, yeah.
yeah, what are you doing? And so part of the self awareness too is not everybody's my responsibility.
Mm-mm.
Not everybody is. Like
Right.
that has been liberating, right? Sometimes y'all be sitting there and it's like this opportunity to help and volunteer. I'll feel my hand going up. Just pull it down.
Good out.
Well, not mine, not mine, right? And so that becomes so important in our self-awareness. It's like you did beautifully today. It's like today is going to be I'm thinking about today, and here are the ways I'm going to love myself to be able to nurture myself in a hard time, right? What is that? So we don't name that because we have to be doers. It's like, what are you doing today? I'm doing this and this. No, today I'm going to stop and reflect and be in a quiet space because my grief is
Mm.
for me today.
For today. Yes, ma'am.
My grief is coming and I know it. And so I'm going to lean into that. That's self awareness.
Yeah. And it's beautiful because it's in that it yields to much more healing. It yields to you being able to be like today, to be productive in life, to do this live, knowing this and putting things in a perspective, in a mental framework that works best, where it's not overwhelming or it's taking things over in a negative way. And I think that's what we need to understand. You said something now. See, now she got another one on you that I'm gonna write down somewhere and probably won't forget again. So, so between like say no and dare not to give an explanation. Now we got, you're not my project. I'm not meant to save everybody. It ain't meant for me to do everything. And it's not, because the truth is, I think you said this, is that our value is not connected to what we do. It's connected to who we are. And when people don't feel like they're being needed for something to do, they feel like they're not validated or valuable at all.
Exactly. Exactly. I have a teenage daughter. You've heard me talk about her. She is
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if she's gonna be a pastor. She is biblically sound like nobody's business. She scares me.
Yeah.
She's so solid. And we were laughing because she walks into a graduation party recently and her cousin's like, so Allison, like, so like where's my gift? Like for graduation. She was like, I am the gift.
Hmm. Hmm.
I was like, how interesting. She's like, time together,
Hmm.
us connecting,
Mm-hmm.
sitting with each other as who we are.
Mm-hmm.
That's the gift. The return on investment of that is that I get to love you as you are unconditionally, and you get to love me as I am unconditionally. And then
I love it. I
By the
love
time we got done, I'm like, at first I was about to lecture her. I'm like, that was arrogant. And then I was like, no, wait a minute.
it.
Hold up. Right? Like, it's not in the material. It's not in the letters behind your name. It's not in the years of experience. It's not, it is in who you are. Nobody can show up like, Reverend Hosey, but Reverend, like, like, I don't even, no need to imitate. No, don't even try. When she occupies the space, nobody can do it like she does.
You're
Nobody can
absolutely
do it like,
right.
right? Nobody can do it like you do, right? So when we start trying to compare and morph to be something we're not, it's really disrespectful to God who took the time to make you just as you are.
Mm,
Why am I trying to be somebody I'm not?
mm,
Thank you, God, for taking the time to make me uniquely me,
mm.
uniquely designed with my own purpose, my own anointing, my own gifts, my own journey.
Exactly.
Like, stop
Exactly.
changing lanes and stop changing lanes.
Right. You know, when you said that, it just made me think about something. You know, these conversations that we have here on this broadcast, my whole goal is to one, create a safe space for us to talk, to be honest, and have all these conversations and deal with different issues, regarding mental health, faith, things like that. But the one thing I've always have noticed that I love, and I've learned that even with people who are in my circle that I thank God for, there is such gifts and jewels and gems that I get just from being with people, talking with them, sharing their company, learning from them. Like Lady Gina was talking about with our women's conference that I went to, iron and sharpening iron, gaining so much wisdom and understanding and strength and guidance just from sharing with one another. And I think that we have been engrafted and misled by this grinding culture that makes us feel like we have to grind in order to be successful, which really that's not a true sense of success. But these are moments that we miss because we feel like we have to do all this stuff because there's nobody else, there's nothing that can be done, I have nowhere to go. But that's what I'm hoping that tonight you guys are getting from this, that you need to be able to be aware enough of you enough to say, you know what, I'm not okay today, and I'm going to do what I need to do to take care of myself. Because guess what? If you don't, you can't look to everybody else to do it for you because they're not going to. They're not
because
going to.
because we trained them, because we're so worried about what people think about us. We've trained them to not respect our boundaries. We always say yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to unlearn that for us, and we have to teach other people around us to not do that. But I mean, I think it's just about, when I think about just how you have leveraged your voice on social media, you don't even know. You keep me upright a lot.
Oh,
Truly, like when I'm like, oh no, and I'll read something, I'll be like, well, that was directly for me. I'm sure that was directly for me. The time, I'm like, I would have gotten, sideways with somebody, and then you'll be like, patience, and I'm like, of course you wrote that. But I will say to you, like, even that, like, how are we best prioritizing what's important to us? How are we negotiating those things that are non-negotiable for us? Like that
mm,
that's about awareness too, right? It's like,
yes.
I used to think, I used to say to people like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And then what and then one day my friend went like, what? You actually need sleep to function. What do you Don't say that in front of your child. Like, don't say that in front of your kids. And she kind of called me in on it. And she's like, what are you that's horrible. You need to be resting now so that you can show up as your real self.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Right?
you.
Like, why don't we do that? We don't do that. We tell each other we don't need that. We absolutely need that.
Well, I heard a pastor say this, and I bought the book by Trisha Hershey called Rest is Resistance.
Hey, change my life.
Mine too, because of because I haven't plenty. I rest a whole lot more because of it. I rest a whole lot more because of
Yep.
it.
The two
Because
the two books that messed me up were that one and
mhm.
Try Softer.
Oh wow, wow,
Ooh,
wow. Wow, because rest is our divine right. As
right.
divine beings, we were created to rest. And
Yeah.
I realize the more that we rest, the better off we are in processing our feelings, the more that we are in being able to heal, the more that we are to maintain our, peace of mind, which I have learned one of the non-negotiable things when it comes to me now through my self-awareness journey is that I will not let anything or anyone, and I don't care who you are, friend, family, or foe, threaten my peace. Period. Period.
Same.
Period.
Same.
I don't care if you're my son. I don't care if you're my friend. I don't care if you're my sister, mama, or cousin. You're not. If you're a threat to my peace, I'm sorry. That's not negotiable. I got to cut off the access, or at least limit it right now, because I'm not going to entertain that for my peace of mind, because my peace of mind is key to everything else functioning right in my life, period.
You can't even recognize who you are or execute in who you are when your peace is disrupted.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. Do you make great decisions when you're angry?
Nope.
When you're lacking peace?
Nope.
When you're hangry? Like, I've had to acknowledge that with my team. I'm like, hey, listen, before I make any decisions, I make sure that I've eaten and rested. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And people don't want to talk about that. I'm like, yeah, I don't recognize myself when I'm in these alternate states. So I have to do these things so that I can be aware and solid in who I am before I execute these things. And people don't want to hear that. People also always push you to have an answer, right? It's like, answer now. No, you don't. I'll get back to you tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I'm going to sit down, pray about it, think about it, right? It's as busy as a badge of honor grind. It's like, do it passively. You always know from a self-awareness perspective, the minute you say yes and you know you shouldn't have. The minute you do it, you're like, should have said yes immediately. That's how you know that you need to check in on your self-awareness, right? Mm-hmm. If you're like, yeah, I'm happy to do that. And as soon as you do it, you're like, oh.
And then be upset about it later when you have to go do it, because we talk about, I do not want to do this. I do not want to go.
Yeah, and blame the people that asked you.
Blame the people.
I used to do that all the time. I can't believe they had me over here in the heat. You chose it. Right? Versus, no, that's not where I'm going to, spend my time. I'm going to be doing this. Or, no, I'm not doing it. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we could just get that down. I see women just melting away at their fast yeses. I am a slow yes person and a fast and I had just owned that about my identity. And people will say, so Pam's not going to do it. Pam's not going to do it. People think that's an insult. That's a compliment. That tells me I'm grounded in who I am.
Right.
And you are not going to be messing with my peace and wrecking my peace. Mm-hmm. That is a non-negotiable. I don't have a long list of non-negotiables, but my peace, like you said, is one of them.
Exactly. So we're getting towards the end of our broadcast tonight. So if you were to drop any lasting words of wisdom in regards to self-awareness that you can share with us tonight, what would that be?
I think what I would say is, in order to really do the work of self-awareness, you have to operate from a, whatever I think it is, that's not it. We are trained cognitively to only look at that top layer emotion, anger, fear, whatever. We're moving so fast that we don't look at what goes under that, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're angry, that's usually despair, a threat, sadness, but we don't go deeper in kind of that mental health continuum to like, what is it that I'm feeling? Am I feeling threatened? So I always say to people, like, when you're doing that journey, like, get honest about what your real feeling is. Like, I have somebody in my circle that finally said one day, and it's like been 2 decades, and she goes, you know what? She goes, do you think I'm jealous of so-and-so? And I wanted to go, yeah. Yes, you are. Because she's right. Didn't want to, but when she did, she unlocked that. Game changer. Like, I realized I was jealous and I was mistreating you, and I should have been supporting you. I mean, totally change it. So I would say to people, like, it's not that first emotion, it's that second, third, and fourth emotion that you should get deep in and think about where that came from. And it came from somewhere not present, came from something way back, childhood, relation, like it came from somewhere. And like, get curious about, like, why do I react that way? Why do I feel like I can bring my whole self? What triggers me? What creates a situation where I shrink, right? I see people shrinking all the time. So I would say to people, like, figure out what those deeper pieces are and go after them, because you're worth it.
And we are. Well, as I said, how it is when we do in gardening. Okay, let's get these shovels, let's get these picks, let's get these garden hoes, let's get the digging. Let's get the digging. Let's get the digging. All right. Well, listen, Pamela, thank you so much. You've been wonderful tonight with all the wisdom and everything you shared with us. And I know that those who are on here now, as well as on the replay, are going to really be helped with this. But let's get some information about you. Let's see if we want to reach out to you, get more information about you, what you're doing. Go ahead and share that with us.
Pamela Benson Owens. I'm here in the Austin Round Rock area. I have a consulting firm. I also oversee the Cultural Arts District, and I do a lot of work with pastors. You can find me at PamelaBensonOwens.com is my website. I am open to always talking or sharing or whatever that is. I really, really want to thank you for having me on as a guest. This was great. I have so much respect for you. You have been such a great mentor, and I just really appreciate the opportunity for sure.
Oh
I
my
so
God.
appreciate the opportunity to be on the show. Thank you.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm not gonna cry. And one, I'm not gonna cry. I probably will cry because I'm a water bucket. I don't care. Okay, so I thank you. That right there humbles me so much to know from you that you're a mentor because in a lot of ways you've mentored me. Just
Uh,
by some of those gems that you have shared in my life, that's really, believe it or not, a lot of the things that you have said, even when I was at the retreat and going forward, has shifted the trajectory of my healing process as well as my life to where, like I was telling a pastor yesterday, that I'm finally living the life that I meant to live, fulfilled, filled with purpose, and I'm doing what I love to do.
I love
This is what
it.
I love to do. This right here is what I love to do. I love to create safe spaces for people to be honest, to talk, to get it out. Let's hash it out. Let's get it together. Let's make it work. So I thank you so much for that. If you don't mind staying on real quick while I'm making a couple of announcements, and then I'm going to ask you to pray us out for tonight. All
Absolutely.
right, family. So thank you so much for joining us with Pamela and I tonight on the Lighthouse with Dr. T. So I have a few announcements because this is National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. It's July. So guess what? Your girl right here is kind of busy right now. Okay. For those of you who are in the Pensacola area, July 12th, Wednesday, July 12th at 10:45 a.m., I'm going to be a guest presenter for the day session of the annual Visionaries in Covenant Vision Conference, which is a church fellowship that's not only just in Pensacola, but it's regional. This is kind of full circle for me because I used to be a member of Deliverance Tabernacle. And here it is 17 years later, I'm coming back to actually minister what God's given me. So if you get registration involved, go on my page. You can hear about that. Then Chicago, my Chicago peeps, July 13th, I'll be traveling to go out there for our women's conference, Women Without Birthing Without Defects. I'll be part of that conference, the Diamond and Pearl session. So if you're in Schaumburg, Chicago, Cook County, Illinois, I'm going to be there. So just definitely join me out there. Then NAMI Pensacola, we're going to have our Sharing Hope event, our first one ever in our community. And it's going to be at the Wedgwood Community Center here in town in Pensacola, Florida. The pastors, leaders, community leaders, I need y'all here because this is specifically for you. This is specifically for our people of color about how we deal with mental health, how we deal with our faith. So this presentation is going to be really critical. And then also, next month, we have August 5th, our next broadcast. We're going to talk about prayer as being part of self-care in our mental health recovery. I have my brother all the way from Jacksonville, Florida, Elder Dwight Follins, who is going to be our special guest. He's a well-known prayer clinician, so he's going to join us. And then August 19th, I've been waiting to get to this. We're going to do a follow-up conversation on what we talked about last up about narcissism. Narcissism in the pulpit. Yeah, we're going to talk about it because it's evident. And so my special guest for that on August 19th, and y'all see the details coming up soon, will be none other than Kay Hutchinson from IKEA Healing, who came on last month. But then I'm also going to have the honor of having my bishop, jurisdictional bishop for the Southwestern Florida Church of God in Christ, no other than Bishop Anthony Gilliard. He's going to be on. And the reason why I'm grateful that he's going to be on this particular broadcast, because he is well known and he is well regarded in our nation as a man of God when it comes to speaking revelatory word, but he's also about the mental health process, the mental health journey, self-awareness, all these different things, and how it affects clergy specifically in the Church of God in Christ and really abroad. So you don't want to miss that. Okay, so those are all of my announcements for tonight. And I thank you all for joining us. So my dear sister, Pamela, close us out in prayer if you don't mind.
Love it. Just get it attitude of prayer. God, thank you so much for this sacred time to be together, a safe space for which to explore our awareness of ourselves and our identity in you. God, help us to be able to work on this path so that we can identify when people bring harm or drama or chaos or toxicity in a way that strengthens us and gives us the courage to be exactly who you have made us to be. God bless all that have tuned in this evening for this call, that they may be able to hear from you and confirm their identity in you in ways that they had never, ever imagined. God, I ask for protective covering as we do this work that you never graduate from. And we ask that you make it plain for us when we can see that we are off kilter and off base with our identity and who we are. God, we are believing you in advance for what you are going to do in this work that needs to be done in our hearts and our minds. We thank you so much for those that brought this together for us to have this time. Continue to bless our journeys and our healing. And all these things we ask in your powerful name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and you have a wonderful, blessed day. Pamela, I love you. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.